What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and we're through to the semifinals. Yes! Not nearly as convincing as the last result against Man U, but still, it was a good overall game. So, with all that being said, there are a few things to talk about. First of all, we did start the game pretty slow. The first 15 minutes were just very. It felt like very slow movement of the ball. It felt like the defending wasn't quite the typical Chelsea style, the quick pressure, the high pressure. It was very lackadaisical at times. And Man U had a lot of possession in the first 15 minutes, and it looked like they, had might get a few chances away. But with that said, despite all of that possession that they had, the best chance that they created was one from. It was like Rashford had the ball, but then Spilicueta stepped in, poked it away. Cahill managed to poke it away from him again, and then Mkhitaryan has a shot from outside the 18 that Courtois had covered anyway. And then after that, it was like Chelsea. After the first 15 minutes, Chelsea pretty much had possession the rest of the time. They're just constantly just putting so much pressure on them. We had the ball, we were at them, we were at them, we're at them. And it wasn't until the second half that they got their best chance of the game, which was the Rashford chance. So I do want to talk about obviously the one decision that does change the game entirely, and that's the Herrera red card. Now, you could look at this and say, well, this also made it to where Man U could have been a bit more defensive, and just taken the draw, gone for penalties. Um, so you could say that the red card may have actually helped them instead of, if they're pushing forward. Chelsea loved to play on the counterattack at times, so if they hadn't gotten the red card, they would have been pushing forward a lot more, trying to get a goal, and it would have created ample opportunities for us to score. So you kind of have to look at that and say, well, that doesn't necessarily mean the game's over for them. Now, was it a red card? Well, to be fair, most of the time referees would look at that and say, okay, on its own, that would be a yellow for persistent fouling. Herrera and Jones and a lot of the Man U players were just constantly foul, 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 foul. Herrera's first yellow was definitely deserved. Just kind of stood up in Hazard's path, and Hazard ran into him. So definitely a yellow for that one. This next one, maybe some referees would look at that and say, okay, well, since you're already on a yellow, I'll give you a warning. But Michael Oliver today said, you know what? I just said no more. Right off of the free kick, you stick your leg out and you trip him up from behind. Here's your second yellow. So on a different day, the referee may not have given that. But in my opinion, I do think referees should stop being so lenient at times. There are a lot of players in the league. Francis Coughlin is one in particular that constantly I notice where he's on a yellow, he commits some foul that on a normal situation you say, well, that's a yellow, but because he's already on a yellow, the referee says, okay, you have one more, and then Wenger subs him out, and so he doesn't get a second yellow. So you have to look at it and say, okay, well, on certain days that may not be a card, on other days it would be. But then you also have to look and say, well, there were certain players like Valencia, like Rojo, who were lucky to not be on a card as well. Valencia had two or three just yellow card challenges. There was the one on Hazard where he trips him from, or he steps on his ankle from behind, then he pulls him, and then he slides in from behind, not even going for the ball. No yellow card there. He jumps 2-footed into a challenge, no yellow card there. And then Hazard turns him and he just kicks him, no yellow card there. So 3 yellow card challenges, nothing given. So it's not like the Herrera one was, oh, well, that was harsh, and then the referee was just harsh on Man U the rest of the night. No, it was, that one, some people will say it was harsh. I personally think it should be given more often, this second yellow card. But then you also have to look and say, well, there are a lot of non-harsh decisions that he made in Man U's favor. So that's pretty much it as far as the referee is concerned. Overall, he didn't have a terrible game. I'd say in the second half, it felt like he got a lot more lenient with Man U. I don't know if somebody got in his ear at halftime or something, and he kind of realized, okay, well, maybe I'll lay off the yellows. But it felt like they had to kill somebody to get a yellow in the second half. But done with the referees. Let's talk about the team. I wasn't a big fan of seeing this lineup. It was kind of a question for me, though. Were we going to see a strong lineup? Because it seemed like that's what everybody else was doing this weekend, all the Premier League teams putting on their strongest lineup because, well, there's no Premier League games. But at the same time, I was also thinking, but what type of manager is Conte? We saw against West Ham in the League Cup, he put out a team similar to the ones he'd been putting out against the smaller sides. The players that aren't getting that much playing time. Terry, Zuma, Ake, those type of Ake wasn't back by then, but it was players that hadn't been playing a whole lot. And so I was wondering, is he going to do the same thing in the FA Cup? Is he going to give these players that haven't really been playing a whole lot, is he going to give them some time? Well, he goes with pretty much a starting lineup that he would normally in a Premier League game, with the exception of Fabregas and Pedro out and William Matic in, which is the only two changes from the last game. Now, ultimately, of the two decisions, I think Willian worked out better just because he's definitely growing back into that position. He's growing into the game again. He's been a little bit off ever since that long break that he took when his mom died. So it was nice to see that he got almost, I can't remember how long it was. I want to say it was like 75 minutes today. And he was effective. He did create a few chances just on his speed and on his dribbling alone. And on top of that, his passing definitely improved too. There were a lot of little flicks that he was doing, the type of stuff you expect Pedro to do. And the fact that he's managed to do it as well just is nice to see. Okay, we've got two good options that we can put in there. But his speed definitely came in as the biggest attribute that he brought. Matic did pretty well defensively, but there's still too many times where it's like his passes are just is too slow. They're not great passes. They're not passes that are helping us keep possession, or he's getting the ball poked away from him. Whereas Fabregas, whenever he's on the ball, it's like we're going to have possession for the next 5 minutes because Fabregas doesn't lose the ball easily. You're going to have to put a lot of pressure on him to keep him from keeping the ball. So that was just, it's a minor thing, I know, because, we weren't passing the ball. Well, we still won. But at the same time, it's hard for me because I do like Matic as a player. I do think he's an effective player at times. But there are also so many moments where I'm looking at it and saying, Fabregas would be a better player in this situation. There are instances in the game where Matic has the ball and I'm thinking Fabregas would have found a pass, or Fabregas would have done this, and Fabregas would have done that. And I hate to compare two players that really shouldn't be compared, but when they're in the same position, you kind of have to think, okay, so who's going to be the better player in this situation? And most of the time, the answer is Fabregas right now. So I don't know what Matic needs to do. I guess passing would definitely be the first thing because Conte's got the defensive side down. Obviously, you don't have to worry about defensive duties when Conte's on the field as much. So he needs to work on just bringing something else to his game aside from being the big body. Because you could just throw any big body in there. Look at Fellaini. He just goes in there to be a big body in the field, but that's about all he does. He's not very effective with his passing, with his tackles, with standing people up. Honestly, he's a very average player, but he keeps ending up with game time because he's a big body in the midfield. But since Pogba's come in, he's also been a big body, and so Fellaini started to lose his time because of that. So I see the same thing for Matic. I see him, okay, well, he's a big body if you want somebody to go up and win the header, but at the same time, David Luiz is stepping in and doing the same thing, so he needs to bring something else to his game just so he can provide more for the team, aside from just, I can win the aerial challenge. And even in that case, well, why isn't he doing that on corners and free kicks? But going on to individual performances, Courtois did well. Didn't really have that many shots on him. The one-on-one chance with Rashford made a good save, but aside from that, wasn't really tested overall. And I don't mind seeing that. I don't mind getting to say, Courtois didn't really have much to do tonight, because that just means our defense did pretty well. So on to our defense. Azpilicueta, once again, definitely the more solid of the center backs. Whenever you've got a striker up there like Rashford, who's just got a lot of speed, Azpilicueta normally is the one that shines because he's the one that's tracking back. He's the one that's getting back and helping out because David Luiz and Gary Cahill do not have the speed for it. So really saw a lot from him, and on top of that, did pretty well coming forward. I will say he needs to stop trying to shoot. Just there were two in a row that he tried and just completely mishit it completely. And after that, he stopped shooting. I think he kind of realized, okay, I think that's it for me tonight. But I don't know, he does need to kind of add a bit more in his attack, just because whenever we're playing against teams that like to pack it in or like to have everybody back, after Man U went a man down, that's what they did. They kind of started packing it in. Whenever that happens, he has a lot more room to come forward, but his attacking side of his game isn't the greatest. He's hitting a few great crosses, and from time to time he does have a shot that is dangerous. But overall, it's still not that effective, and so we need more from him if we're going to be playing teams that are going to pack it in on us. David Luiz had one big mistake that kind of marred his overall performance. The one that led to the Rashford 1-on-1 chance, and he's done this a couple times this season where he just kind of runs out, goes in for the challenge, and misses completely. And as one of your center backs, you can't do that, especially because Azpilicueta had stepped up to pressure somebody. Whenever you've only got two back and the other one's Gary Cahill, you can't just go flying into it and completely miss. You got to at least poke it out of bounds, or you got to get a touch on it or something. But he just missed completely, missed Rashford as well. So really kind of strange how that happened. But like the rest of it was okay. It's just that one bad choice really kind of overall makes his performance very average. He did some good things. He did overall pretty well. But that one mistake is like, but that's a big mistake. You can't be making mistakes like that. So that one mistake does kind of turn his, well, that was a good performance, to, it was average. So hopefully he can cut those mistakes out of his game, because it has happened a couple times before, just where he decides, oh, I'm going to come flying out. The other one that I'm thinking of is the Man City game where he kind of flew out on Aguero. And then Gary Cahill, definitely the weaker of the three still. And for the majority of the first half, I'm thinking, okay, he's definitely pushing himself out of this position. Terry or Zuma's going to come in and take over. Second half, he got a bit better. The Rashford chance, he did fairly well, just not letting him in behind. He did well to stay up in front of him, because most defenders would go just step in and try to win the ball, especially when it got close. But he just sort of stayed in front of him, forced him to one side, so where now it's kind of shut down the angle because Courtois stepped out a little bit. So he did well enough there. He didn't do something spectacular like make a last-ditch challenge, but he did well enough. And while I still think Zuma or Terry would probably be a better option there, I can see why Conte still puts trust in him, just because overall he's solid. But those first 15 minutes, a lot of the problems we were having were on his side. Whether it was him diving into challenges, whether it was he had the ball but then he passes it into trouble or he gives it away. So I still think there's a lot in his game that needs improving, and I think he's 30 now. At that age, you can't be having problems. You can't be having mistakes like that, because you can't say, oh, well, he's young, he'll grow, he'll get better, he'll gain more experience. You should already have enough experience to not make those mistakes, to not give away the ball, to not constantly be the only side that's being threatened. But the other part of that is Marcus Alonso today was awful. Like, I would say he was our worst player today, because he a couple crosses, I'll give him that. He didn't do everything wrong. There were some things he did well. His crosses today were pretty good, pretty dangerous. But defensively, he was awful. And a lot of that has to do with he doesn't have the speed to keep up with a player like Valencia. So he's just constantly being run by. He's not tracking back. So he and Cahill are struggling. And honestly, I'm surprised that Man U didn't keep attacking from that side. There were a lot of times where it looked like they were going to, and then all of a sudden they're like, now let's cut it back and go across. And now you're on Azpilicueta and Moses' side, and you're not getting anywhere over there. So it's just those two players, Alonso and Cahill, were the main problem we had for the first 15 minutes. And main problem that was why we looked so on the back foot. We couldn't get out of our own half. We were struggling defensively. They were pretty much the main problem for it. So I don't know what to say there. I don't know what to do about it. Obviously, I would like to see Conte give some young players some time. Kennedy, Ake, somebody out there. Somebody that can be more effective. But he still keeps them out there, still likes to have them in there for some reason. I don't entirely know why, but hopefully he gets back to the player that I remember when he first started playing there. The player that worked hard defensively and offensively. Got up and back, that was very effective on both sides. Well, maybe not as effective defensively, but still worked hard to cause problems, that didn't let players just run by him without even taking them down. So he just really dropped off the past few weeks. Into the midfield, I've already talked about Matic. He still played well. Like I said, comparing him to Fabregas, because I'm thinking, what would Fabregas do if he were in there? Conte, I don't know. where did this guy come from? He's not human. He's not human. I've been reading so many articles about him. I've been reading articles about his tackling, his work rate on the field, all of this stuff. I've been just reading all of these articles, and then all of a sudden tonight he just pulls a goal out of nowhere. I'm just like, I remember thinking in the first half there were a lot of shots being taken from distance. I'm just like, come on guys, let's stop that. Second half started, Spilicueta had one, Conte had one. I'm like, guys, come on, stop. He winds up for him, like, God, come on, it's in the corner. Where the hell did that come from? I I was shocked, but also very happy and kind of giggling to myself because, holy crap, what a strike! It wasn't incredible. It wasn't like one of the ones that just flies up or 90. You're just like, oh, what a great hit! But it was still a hit. It's one of those that's bending away from the keeper. De Gea looked like, I think he thought, okay, he's opened up his foot, so he's going this way, and so he just happened to catch him wrong-footed, and he couldn't get back across to that corner. But it was very well placed in the corner. It was just a nice hit. That's not what I expect out of Conte. I've seen his shots from outside the box. They're normally up and above, but wow, they just pulled it out of nowhere. Also did well defensively, just completely dominating the midfield, making Pogba look like he's just a worthless player, which he kind of is. But man, just watching him play, I feel like we've got the title set for the next 3 years as long as he stays at Chelsea because he's going to be the reason why we win every year. And even if he doesn't stay, holy crap, Hazard tonight. Wow. I mean, just back to his best. And we've said this a few times this season, oh, he's back to his best. He's back to his best. But to be honest, this was just the perfect showcase for it. I mean, that turn, his turn is what started our possession in the first half. I talked about the first 15 minutes. We didn't really have a whole lot of chances. All of a sudden, it was about the 15th minute. Ball comes in from Cahill or Spilicueta or Luis, one of the defenders, and Smalling's right there, and he just says, turns him, and just leaves him to die. He's just like, stay down. I'll come back later for your lunch money. And then gets in, has a nice shot, deflected off of Darmian's leg. De Gea has to get across for a fingertip save. Brilliant play. And then from that corner, good chance from Gary Cahill, another good save from De Gea. And honestly, at this point, I was kind of thinking, oh, De Gea, he's unbeatable tonight. And honestly, if it weren't for De Gea, pretty much like Man U's, the past 3 years for Man U, if it weren't for De Gea, they would be so much worse off. If Real had managed to get him 2 years ago, they would be probably like 12th place this season because he's ridiculous. He makes some of the craziest saves. It should be 3 or 4 nothing at the end of this game, and somehow it only ended up 1 nothing because De Gea. But Hazard, just aside from that chance, constantly putting pressure. He's so quick on the ball. He's showing his ability. And it's lovely to see. It's so amazing when you got a player like Conte that runs the midfield. You got a player like Spilicueta who controls the back line. You got a player like Hazard who's just on form pretty much every game. It's incredible. It's such a good balance of players. And he created so much. And even when he wasn't creating, Willian, like I said, he stepped it up tonight. He definitely created a whole lot more just off of his speed, with his quick little passes, with his turns. He really did a whole lot for us tonight, and I wish he could have gotten himself a goal, but De Gea had to be a party pooper, keep him from scoring. I don't know, as I'm talking about Hazard, I'm like, wait a minute, I missed Moses. Moses also played well tonight. I will say he does need to cut out this, okay, I'm going to kick it down the line, and I'm going to cut it back. I'd prefer if he just kicked it down the line, ran after it, crossed it in. Because when you're going up against Young, I'm not saying Young's like incredible, but he has a lot of speed. And so he matched Moses' speed for speed tonight. And so whenever that happens, you want Moses to just take it past him, quick cross. But instead, it's like he takes it past him, he slows it down, now Young's in, slide tackle, pokes it out for a throw in, or takes it off of him. So he needs to start learning when to cross it, and he also needs to get his crosses a little bit better because, his crosses sometimes can be a little wild. They're all the way to the other side of the box, or they're right at a defender. So his crossing side of the game definitely needs to improve. But he works so hard on both sides of the ball. He gets back, gets up. He works everywhere. He's pretty much like Conte, but not as effective defensively, I would say. But he's still a workhorse. He does very well getting up and down. Perfect winger, in my opinion. Just aside from the crossing. And then the final one to talk about is Costa, and honestly, I'm really disappointed. Because after the goal against who did they play? Why can't I remember the last game now? Was it Swansea? I want to say it was Swansea. Why don't I remember? Um, but yeah, the last game, Costa got himself a goal, and so it looked like, okay, so things are on the up and up for him. But then this game, it's like he's back to the old Costa. He's wrestling with Rojo. He's going down every single chance he gets. He's trying to draw a foul. He's trying to buy a foul. He's fighting. He's angry. He's yelling. He's not making the runs he needs to. Instead of laying the ball off quickly, he's dribbling like, come on, come kick me, come kick me. That's not the Costa I want to see. That's the Costa that I thought was gone at the beginning of this season. I thought Conte came in, changed his attitude, but it's like he's back now. It's like he's back to the same old Costa. There's so many times where I'm just like, dude, stay on your feet, have the shot. But instead he's like, no, I'm gonna go down and dive, and most of the time it's not a dive, but he's like waiting for the contact to come in. Contact comes in, just a little bit of contact, and he falls over, and he's looking for a PK. And every single time, the referee sees that he's looking for it. The referee sees that he's waiting for the contact to come in and then goes down. It's frustrating because he has the ability to do it. He has the ability to take on the entire back line of Man U and just put him to the sword and put in goal after goal after goal. But it's like he's too interested in, it's all about me. It's all about me. Look at me, everybody. I'm fighting. Arr, I'm angry. It's kind of frustrating. I want to see him change. I want to see him back to his very best. And unfortunately, he's dropped off in the last few games. And it's kind of happened since the whole, the talk about China and the row that he had with Conte. All of that stuff happened, and it seemed like, okay, well, now it's done, so he's back. But honestly, ever since then, he really hasn't been as effective. He hasn't been moving nearly as much. He's been more interested in fighting with defenders than he has playing with the ball, or he's been interested in dribbling instead of moving the ball quickly around. It's just a different type of Costa, and I don't know. I don't know what needs to change. I don't know if something has changed or if it's just me, noticing this one game that things are different. But yeah, I was a little disappointed with him just because I think if he were fully committed, if he were fully on top of his game today, I think it would have been a much more convincing scoreline. But because he wasn't, we had to rely on Hazard, Willian, Conte, and our wingers to try to get something done. And even though we managed to, it was still too close a game. And I think it would have been much more of a gap if Costa were more involved. So, second half, subs that came in. Fabregas was the first one. Still think the subs are coming in a little too late. I was thinking this Fabregas change needed to happen much earlier, like 65 or 70, but it came in 75, I believe. And of course, it's pretty much the change that's been happening a lot lately. Fabregas comes in for either Willian or Pedro, whoever's there, and we almost turn into a 3-5-2 with Fabregas, Conte, and Matic in the midfield. Of course, it's been Matic coming in the past couple games, but I like that. I think it adds more. First of all, it adds more numbers in the midfield, but also it allows Hazard to be kind of a second striker instead of an attacking midfielder. And I really think he likes that kind of false nine role. He does very well there. So next sub, Moses went off looking maybe hurt, maybe just sore. I don't know what it was, but I'm hoping it's nothing bad. I'm hoping he's still good to play next week. But Zuma comes in, switching to the back three that we've seen, or the back five that we've seen for a couple weeks now with Zuma, Luis, and Cahill, and then Azpilicueta goes out right. And then Batshuayi came in for like the final 3 minutes of stoppage time. And honestly, worked pretty hard in those 3 minutes. Of the three, Fabregas came on. Obviously, at that point, we had already controlled the game, so him coming on just added a bit more flair in the attack. And he did create a few chances, nearly got a goal himself. But Zuma comes on and just does pretty well defensively. He doesn't really have that much to do. Although the first thing he had to do was win a header off of Pogba, so that was nice. But of the three, Batshuayi came on, and I was really looking to see, what he was going to do. Because with Costa not really doing much today, aside from getting himself a yellow, I'm like, okay, so Batshuayi needs to come on and work hard. And the very first thing he does is win the ball off of Smalling and nearly get through and score a goal, or well, not score, but he set up the attack through Hazard, I believe. So I like the fact that he is working hard. He's still working to try to get himself a place in the team. I really hope going forward that Conte can look at him and say, okay, I want to give you some more time. Especially as we get near the end of the season, if we start to put away the league to where it's like, okay, now it's beyond reach, I want to see him start to get more time just to see how effective he is, because we haven't really gotten to see him that much. So maybe he will, maybe he won't. I'm hoping we can put the league away with 5 or 6 games to go, where it's like, okay, so now we would have to lose every single game to possibly lose the league. Just because I want to see some of these players like Batshuayi, like Ake, like Chalobah, I want to see them given some time because they deserve it. They've all three worked hard. Ake worked hard at Bournemouth, did very well there. Chalobah came in first half of the season as a sub and worked very hard. And honestly, I thought he'd earned himself at least a regular sub, but for some reason he's kind of dropped away from that. And then Batshuayi, I think he's been such a good sportsman, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Professional. Professional, I think, is a better word. But he's just been so professional about it. Just he's had to play second fiddle to Costa. He's only gotten limited time in the FA Cup or in the League Cup. And he's only come on as a sub, and most of the time it hasn't even been for that long. It's been sometimes less than a minute, sometimes maybe a few. So the fact that he's had to go through that after being pretty much a really good top striker at, I think he was at Marseille, I would say, I'm glad that he's still willing to work. I'm glad that he's keeping such a professional attitude about it. But now I think he deserves some sort of reward. I think all of these players that have worked hard deserve a bit of reward. So I know Conte doesn't like to change his team, but I would like to see some changes happen. Hopefully in the next few weeks, especially with, if there are teams that maybe are mid-table teams that aren't really going to be pushing for anything because they don't have anything to fight for. I'd like to see us, get some of these players that deserve some time in. But we're into the semifinal. Hopefully, let's see, Tottenham, Arsenal, Man City are the other three teams left. So either way, it's going to be a really difficult game. We'll probably end up in a London derby, unless either way, it's either a London derby or we face the other side of Manchester. So it's really exciting. I hope. I'm really crossing my fingers we get Arsenal because I don't know, just something about the way they're playing right now. They seem the most vulnerable. But I'm looking forward to the semifinals. I hope you guys are too. I think our next game is Stoke in the Premier League, so let's go get another 3 points. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Who's your man of the match? Who do you think stood out as our best player? And who do you think stood out as kind of our less player? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews. I'll see you at the next game.